So we're part of the paid media team, and we've just been going through ChatGPT and the uses and effectiveness of using it to write ad copy. There's a few areas we'll be looking at it today. So just as an FYI up front, we are just looking at Google search ad copy specifically. So responsive search ads where it has 15 headlines and 4 descriptions. And we're going to see how ChatGPT writes this and if it's effective and would we actually use it in our day-to-day jobs. There's a few other areas we'll touch on with ad copy as well. So we want it to look at performance analysis. So can it highlight headlines and descriptions that are performing well? And can it actually give us useful insight that we can then action in our day-to-day jobs? And a few final areas we'll look at is competitor ad copy. So can it pull out areas of cognitive biases that are useful and does it do it correctly? And a few areas that we would actually avoid at the moment using ChatGPT for.
Cool. So as Rebecca said, one of the areas that we looked at was responsive search ads. So for those who don't know, there are 15 headlines, 4 descriptions, and there's a character limit on the headlines of 30, and for descriptions it's 90. So what we did is we gave it a pretty simple prompt, as we'd give like an AE, and that was, for Coca-Cola, can you write us a responsive search ad? And what it churned out initially was 3 headlines and 2 descriptions. So at a base level, we were kind of like, this is all right. Some of the content that it was writing was original, and each time we asked it to produce something slightly different, it was always original or always different. However, where it really fell down is that it had total disobedience when it came to character limits. So we would, I'm not even joking, we would get it to define a character limit, and then we would get it to say, right, why what you've written is not 30 characters, why is this not 90 characters? It would then try and shorten it, and then if we'd ask it to swap out a headline, it would then completely negate what we'd discussed for the last 10 minutes. And then you get a headline that was closer to 45 characters, and then a description that was closer to a paragraph. So in terms of actually churning out a responsive search ad at this point, it just requires a lot of quality control. So it's something that we've kind of used for more inspiration rather than something that we'd say is client-facing or client-friendly.
Lovely. So we just jump into whether actually ChatGPT is actually good at analysing performance ad copy. So as mentioned earlier, can it actually inform us what headlines and descriptions are performing well, especially around some of our key metrics such as click-through rate, or even actually a bit further in the consumer journey such as conversion rate as well? Short summary is unfortunately no at this point in time. There is quite a few things that probably ChatGPT just doesn't have, which is wider business context, wider campaign analysis as well, and what strategy we're using. So every input that we put in this system and this tool, we did see quite a simplistic answer back that we would probably expect from someone that's just joined PPC to produce. So there's unfortunately no wider big insights from it at the moment or anything actionable. This also might be just because of the way Google search actually displays ad copy now. So they have changed over to responsive search ads only. So that's the 15 headlines, 4 descriptions. And then what Google search will do is make different permutations of that ad copy. So when you generally search in Google search results, you'll just see 2 to 3 headlines and 1 to 2 descriptions. This actually appears quite different in the responsive search ads reports. So you'll get all the different text assets, and it won't actually give you many of the metrics anymore in Google, so it will just give you impressions and Google's own performance rating system. So Google's going to tell you whether it's best, good, low, or yet to actually have a learning from it. So that's quite hard to then input into ChatGPT for it to understand these performance metrics, just because they do vary across the system.
Cool. So one of the things that clients will often ask us is to review some of their competitors' ad copy. So what we did here is we just typed in travel insurance into Google, and then we got a couple of ads, copied and pasted them into ChatGPT, and asked it to pull out the cognitive biases that it was invoking or that it was utilising. Initially, we were pretty impressed. We were like, this seems pretty spot on. This is, it gave a rationale behind each bias. However, as you can tell from our extremely cryptic color coding system, when we actually reviewed it, when push came to shove, a lot of the responses were actually quite tenuous. We basically didn't agree with some of what it was pulling out. There were a couple that were correct, but the more and more we tested it, we kind of came to the conclusion that as a text AI, it's kind of designed to sound correct rather than actually necessarily be correct. We touched on this a little bit later as well. It will, often if it doesn't have the correct answer, it will give you one in the hopes that you kind of don't check it. So In terms of more sort of stumbling blocks for the AI, unfortunately, so it doesn't really have any landing page scraping capability. So we thought maybe we could do this in bulk, and we could just get the URL from the SERP, dump that into ChatGPT, and it would pull out all the sponsored ads. It couldn't do this; it broke the prompt immediately and just said, nope, can't do it. We then went and we copied and pasted in all the ads, and unfortunately, you had to then do quite a bit of legwork in terms of tidying those ads up. You had to remove URLs, structured snippets, etc. If you didn't, then again, the prompt would just break. So you could get it to pull out multiple competitor reviews, but there's a lot of legwork involved in actually getting it sort of ChatGPT friendly, when you could probably just get an AE to do it themselves. Touching on, so keywords are obviously a massive part of paid search. Just in terms of ads, it kind of gives you the steer of what you're going to be writing about and keeping it as relevant as possible to the user. So what we did here is we went onto audi.co.uk, took their URL and dumped it into Keyword Planner on Google Ads to pull out all the relevant keywords for the website. We then dumped that into ChatGPT. GPT. That acronym is going to kill everyone today. We dumped that into ChatGPT, and then we asked it, what keywords would you suggest using for the new ad campaign selling electric vehicles? So there was a lot of data in there. We did tidy it up a little bit because there's quite a lot. So we basically kept it to volume and then year-on-year percentage changes. So that's basically the first couple columns. We gave it to ChatGPT 3.5 and 4, and you should be able to see, so on the far side, basically what we've pulled out there is electric cars, EVs, sustainable vehicles, so all keywords that seem super relevant. And then for ChatGPT 4, it focused very much on Audi electric vehicles and that sort of branded keywords. However, when we sort of reviewed the data ourselves and reviewed the keywords they suggested, it ignored keyword volume, year-on-year percentage changes, like completely. It's very much a text-based AI. It doesn't focus on numbers. So when we pulled the keyword list together ourselves, it was vastly different to what they were suggesting. Yeah.
Lovely. So we've just focused on a few areas around ad copy and keywords. So in the areas where we actually wouldn't use ChatGPT across our paid media, so we have looked at more account manager tasks to AE tasks as well. We just wanted to highlight a few areas. Generally, we've already highlighted that it's not very good at analysis. It doesn't really give you any thoughtful insight or actions just because it doesn't have that wider business context or campaign insight. So anything, if you did put in some campaigns and some data, it would give you very simplistic actions and simple commentary actually that you wouldn't maybe want to send over to a client in your weekly or monthly reports. There's a few cases of like client responses and client strategy we put in. So if we did give a media plan, for example, of Coca-Cola we used earlier, we want to run on Google, Facebook, can you give us actually a paid media strategy? Everything that outputted from the tool was actually quite simplistic. You would still need actually the team and insights to gather actually a full funnel strategy rather than relying on this tool. And as Patrick already mentioned, keyword research, it's just there's a much stronger tool already available. Google Keyword Planner does actually give you search volumes. It gives you low and high bids, and it's just much more data available. And the big fault we actually found in this is ChatGPT didn't actually really consider search volume. So what I did input, you might actually put in a campaign and it might only get 10 clicks a month. And that would actually be pretty useless for us to go back to a client for as well. And one of the big pitfalls actually is ad policies. So there's a few areas that ChatGPT it actually doesn't have wider knowledge past 2021. So if there's areas in your industry that you know are consistently updating, and they always are in paid media, especially across ad policies, then you wouldn't want to use this tool. For example, for this is crypto policies across Google. If we actually type this in now, it would give us 2021 ad policies. So it's only available to do crypto ads across US and Japan. However, that's changed in the last year or two, and we're now allowed to use that across multiple other countries, including France and Germany. So some of your output might be slightly updated at this point in time, especially using the Chat 3.5 version. So a few areas we would want to actually start looking at using it and how we'd actually want to use it in our day-to-day jobs. So as Patrick mentioned, specifically around ad copy creation, it's more used to inspire rather than create, so you couldn't copy over every headline description and use it in a campaign at the moment from the output. However, it might give you a few basic ideas if you're struggling in some areas or kind of don't feel very creative at the moment. For performance analysis, we would just recommend to avoid. It takes ages to get the correct prompt. You're just going to get very simplistic analysis. As mentioned, no wider business context, so there's not really a point of using ChatGPT for it. For competitor ad copy, we did see the cognitive biases. However, it's just something you would have to review. So some of them were correct, and you could actually send that over and kind of highlight them in your reports. However, you would need to actually go through. And that's sort of our overall thoughts, really, to be honest, is like some areas it's good in for ad copy creation and Inspire, but everything that comes out of ChatGPT does need to be QA'd at the end of the day.
Cool. So, for those that don't know, Bard is Google's answer to ChatGPT. It's their model, their AI, and so we're just going to cover some of the our thoughts of it and sort of the pros and cons of the model. So John touched on this at the beginning of the talk. So in ChatGPT, we have a big kind of one that we all use, and there's a chat history that we can all go and view. So unfortunately, Bard doesn't have this. Basically what happens is that when you close the tab, you lose all conversation that you've had with the model. So you can go back and view what prompts you gave it, but you don't view the answers that it got. So if you decide to use it and you like something, save it, because after that it's gone forever. There was some landing page scraping capability. Mixed results on this. So what we did a thought leadership piece last week on ChatGPT, and what I asked it to do was go in and pull out relevant keywords from it, and it refused to do it. However, then when I asked it to summarize the article and who wrote it, it gave a good summary, and it was correct on the author. I asked ChatGPT to do this, and no, just didn't pull out anything correct, made up what the article was about, and gave a false author as well. In terms of guidelines, ChatGPT and Bard both say they have quite strict guidelines. Bard, it's kind of more or less open season on what it decides is a guideline on that given day. You can pretty much get it to create or do more or less whatever you kind of want in terms of creating content and in terms of getting around those landing page scraping capability sort of things. In terms of building actual Google Ads accounts, it can do it, but by the time you've built out the sort of prompt to get you the table that you could then put everything into, someone in the paid search team will have already done it and probably uploaded it to editor, and you'd have your account live. So it can do it. I just don't think it's fast enough or particularly useful. It just has the capability. However, where it is useful, unlike ChatGPT, it's got real-time learning, so it's quite up to date in terms of the content it will give you. And this is just because it draws all its responses from the internet, so it's actually almost live in terms of what it can give you. Downsides, it's only available in English. Despite it being from Google, it still ignores character limits despite our best efforts. And then just similar to ChatGPT, in terms of its keyword research limitations, there's just better tools. It can do something, but it's not really data driven, so not something we'd super recommend using.
Thank you.
Awesome.
That's the end of that.